those stories about Leonard, I never heard, never even like suspected or even thought anything like that would be possible. You almost, hopefully, kind of wonder if it was kind of embellished to help promote a book or something. Just
Was
really hope he didn't have to really go through stuff like that. I wish I had the chance to uh, talk with Emmanuel Stewart about that because I interviewed him many times, but we never discussed Sonny Liston. But to hear that a guy like Emmanuel Stewart held Sonny Liston in such high regard is after he trained Vladimir Klitschko and Lennox Lewis, two of the greatest of all time. For Emmanuel Stewart to say that Sonny Liston may have been the greatest ever if he would have started younger and had better trainer, better management is very high praise. What always bothered me about that fight was when he beat Leonard in Montreal, he had all the leverage to call the shots. He didn't have to be forced into that rematch just less than 6 months after he beat him in Montreal. He could have told everybody, "I'm the boss now. I want to take two easier fights, and then I'll fight Leonard again." But he allowed himself to be rushed into that rematch, and you could clearly see physically he was not in the shape he was for the first fight. The ring looked almost twice as big as the Montreal fight. And if you look at the ring entrances and the intensity of the Duran in the Montreal fight and the New Orleans fight, it's totally different. It's not the same Duran. But I never forget, Sugar Ray Leonard said that. It was years ago. He said that. He only said it once. And I was like, wow. He only regards Floyd Mayweather just to be as good as his father. But that blueprint of picking the right fights was kind of started by Roy Jones at the end. Though Roy Jones was an amazing fighter in his peak and prime years. And then Mayweather kind of copied that. And, after Bernard Hopkins and De La Hoya, there were really no great young American talents coming up. And Mayweather was the only one. And the American establishment could not afford to have Mayweather lose. And so he didn't lose. Yep, a franchise fighter like a Hulk Hogan, like a Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard. Mayweather was designated as that guy. Was he a great fighter? He was pretty good. But the true great fighters would have unified all the titles and would have fought all the best. No questions, no excuses. And another thing Mayweather does, which none of the other great fighters do, he takes cheap shots at guys like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson in the media. He
Yep.
tries to bring them down to build himself up. All the true great fighters, they never do that. They respect all the other greats. They love all the other greats. Mayweather gets jealous and envious
Yep.
at the mention of the other great fighters. At one time, I thought Tyson Fury was on the road to the all-time greatest. How good he looked against Vladimir Klitschko, winning a decision, and 6'9", the elusive boxing skills, the toughness, the intelligence, the fearlessness, the cockiness, the charisma. Almost a better talker than Muhammad Ali, and physically superior if he would have taken care of himself. But there's something in that mad genius of Tyson Fury that wasn't meant to be a long-term great fighter.
So I'm Super Slim, and welcome to the podcast, folks. We ask you if you take a moment right now to go down and hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you feel so inclined. What we try to do is bring you good quality content with cutting edge information and also sustainable information. So if something's a new hype right now, and we think it's a new hype that may not be a lasting thing, we'll tell you about it. And that's to help you navigate the waters of whatever you're doing for performance, maintenance, sustainability of your mind, body, and spirit in your own lives. So Scoop Malinowski and I have shared one other conversation on athletics, specifically boxing and tennis. And those are the two sports we follow the most closely. I've actually trained boxers in Sacramento, California. I've been a Jack LaLanne mixed with aerobics, mixed with Michael Jackson dancing type of a fitness guy my entire life. So I was a good person to be around these young boxers in Sacramento back in the early 90s. When I did it, I was a professional dancer at the time. I was a mascot, and I had a lot of aerobic fitness and a lot of skipping rope type fitness. So I was training these young people about all the fitness side. And then the boxing coach would come in and teach them all the boxing, but he would teach me the drills so I could work the drills with the kids. I could swipe the hand over, swipe the hand under, and they'd have to dodge that. I never learned the mitts, but I figure if I spent some time in there, I could probably learn the mitts. Scoop, have you ever done any boxing training?
What's so hard about the mitts? You just hold the mitts up and they punch the mitts.
Well,
right?
They have like a routine of boom, 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 and you have to be ready to move that because these guys like Tyson at let's say he's training, he's like 240 before he gets into shape. He could throw a punch, and if you don't do what it's designed to do, he can miss and throw his back out or shoulder, or he can whack you. So that's the kind of thing I was talking about.
Yeah, you see those high level varied combinations that they do, but there's also just basically simply holding the mitts, which is a good workout.
Yeah, you go like this, and you tell them where you want to hit, uppercut.
Boxing training, yeah. As a kid, I wanted to learn how to be a boxer, but we didn't have any gyms or any coaches or anything. But we got the gloves and we had our fights on our own. We set up our own boxing league, and we had titles, we had magazines, and nobody wanted to lose badly, so we kind of taught ourselves. And key to boxing is straight punches, hands up, and throw a lot of punches and try to move your head and hold when you have to.
A moving target. I'll used to say, his hands can't hit what his eyes can't see. And it's true. I mean, I don't know if you watch this, but I'll zoom us in here. But the fight between Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, do you remember that fight?
How could I forget? That was one of the greatest fights of all time.
One of the greatest fights of all time. So when's the last time you watched it or heard talk about it?
That fight, probably within the last 5 years, watched it. And I did an interview with John McEnroe, and he was actually at that fight. He went to that fight like 2 days after he won the U.S. Open because it was on a Monday night back then.
What do you think, 82-ish?
81.
81.
September 81.
September of 81. And where was that held? Vegas?
Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, Caesar's Palace.
2 days after McEnroe won the U.S. Open.
Wow. And so he flew out to see that.
Or Tuesday. Maybe it was Tuesday. Maybe it was a Tuesday night, which is an unusual night for a big fight now.
I wonder what happens at Caesar. Is that's probably the same venue they hold, not MMA, but WWF at the time before it became WWE, and concerts and things like that. It's a big venue, correct?
Tennis matches, yeah. There's the indoor one on the indoor tennis court, and then there's the outdoor one in the parking lot. They build the temporary stadium.
So I've watched an interview with Joe Buck and Sugar Ray. Have you seen that interview?
No.
It's very good. I haven't read Sugar Ray's book, but he talks about some things that were pretty dark when he was in his late teens that happened of the sexual abuse type nature against him. And I never knew anything about that. I always saw him as this confident guy. He talked about drinking and cocaine. I didn't know, I had heard drinking stories about him, but I didn't know about the cocaine and the dark side, but he was trying to mask things. And he said he even bought a Rolls Royce, and he didn't even like Rolls Royces. He was just living life in a binging and an out of control state, even though he had a child and a wife at the time. And he seems to be a very nice person. What are your thoughts on Sugar Ray the person?
Met him a few times, interviewed him once, and I've encountered him through other people told me stories, and he's really popular, well-liked guy. Not as warm, and you get the loving feeling meeting Duran. Not quite, don't quite adore him like Duran. Duran has some kind of special warmth and chemistry, and he really loves his fans. Leonard quite not quite like that. Those stories about Leonard, I never heard, never even like suspected or even thought anything like that would be possible. You know, almost hopefully kind of wonder if it was kind of embellished to help promote a book or something. Just really hope he didn't have to really go through stuff like that.
It doesn't sound to me when you watch the interview that he was trying to bring out the dark thing about his, late youth, 17-ish, 18-ish little guy. And I think he came from a good family. They believed in him. He chose that path. He had ability in it. He worked hard. But watch the interview and tell me what you think. But I'm going to show you one part of the interview right now, unrelated to that story, where he tells Joe Buck about the training he did to get ready for Hagler. So Hagler is known as this guy who would go down to this underground thing like a basement and hang out there for a number of hours doing all kinds of shadow boxing. This is, I guess, after a lot of his physical training and normal boxing training with his coaches, he'd go down there and he'd get into a zone. Michael Jackson used to do that at Neverland Ranch and other places. Just get in there, put the music on, and get into that zone and create that fluidity and that resolve, which you really need in boxing in the beginning and the end of the fight. You need that resolve because you're going to get hit and stunned. And we know Tyson had that great line, which I don't know if he invented, but everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face.
I never heard anybody say that but Tyson. A lot of people copied it after, but I think Tyson's the originator on that.
I hope he is, because I like a lot of his energy. He has a strange energy and that's built in, but he also has a really interesting energy. And I hope he did come up with that, because that would be nice if the planet's still here 200 years from now, that they can look back and, like a president or head of state uses that line in a discussion.
Tyson is an original person, and he's a creative person. And one of his trainers, Stacy McKinley, told me he has 9 different personalities.
I don't doubt that. Now, and have you heard Rogan talk about why he built the table width, the width he has it on for his interviews?
No.
It was because of Tyson, because Tyson showed up one day for an interview and he had all that energy on. He was getting ready for the Roy Jones Jr. fight, and he had that pump and that testosterone and that viciousness going. And even though Rogan's a heck of a combat fighter, he's not like a wrecking machine, a killer type guy like Tyson. So he said that's why when he redesigned his studio, he made it extra wide between the guest and Rogan. Pretty funny stuff. So here's what
he feared Tyson losing his temper.
Yeah, it just the whole energy. When I don't know if you've ever been, or I guess you before and after fights, you've been around people like, let's say Tyson knocks somebody out in round 1 and he's still pumped up, and you've been close to them. I imagine you felt a different energy than 2 weeks later meeting Tyson at a, more of a gathering type thing when he doesn't have to be on his viciousness game. Does that make sense?
See.
So let's hear.
Also to avoid a possible Jim Rome and Jim Everett clash on live TV. Remember that one?
No, tell me about that. I haven't heard that.
Jim Rome was provoking and antagonizing Jim Everett, who was the quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams, calling him Chris Everett, kind of implying that he wasn't tough enough.
Oh, no.
And Jim Everett said, if you call me that one more time, and he did, and then he attacked him on the air.
Wow.
They had a little mini brawl in the studio on the set.
And that was the end of the interview?
Yeah, of course.
And Rome was big time. What years was Rome big time? But I remember vividly how popular he was. What were those popular years?
It had to be early '90s. When Jim Everett was a top NFL quarterback. I think early '90s, possibly late '80s.
I don't know what happened to Rome later on. Maybe he made enough money, he didn't have to worry about things. Do you know anything more about Rome?
No,
No.
he kind of vanished from the scene, but he was intentionally goading a guy who came on his show as a guest to do him a favor, and to treat him like that was really bad. I thought Jim Everett handled that just the way he should have.
I think so too, from what you told me. I think I'm a huge Ali fan, and I think you are to a certain degree. And I followed Ali the closest I followed
Totally.
any athlete. You're also a big fan?
Oh, my favorite Ali video is him walking down Miami Beach, and how he's loving with all the fans. Yeah, come on, everybody. Ali and is one of the most beloved champions in the history of sport.
So one of the more well-written books I've ever read is the book about Cosell and Ali. It's so well written. And I think Cosell was passed on by this time. Ali was around. I think I read it in 2009 or 10. I couldn't put it down. Good pictures. The whole story is phenomenal. But they do in that book, just with a little bit of the coverage of Ali's story, and in other interviews, and even Ferdy Pacheco, his fight doctor, has mentioned this about how he would say derogatory things towards Joe Frazier. And Joe Frazier's this nice guy who grew up hard in the Deep South, came to Philadelphia, worked his way up, and he just had a pleasant disposition, and caring, kind, never was a braggadocious type person, hard worker, and lent Ali money when Ali was broke during the Vietnam banishment from boxing. And I think that was just something Ali couldn't control in his personality, because of, Frazier becoming the one who had the title and then knocking Ali down in their big fight in 1970. So that kind of stuff were some of the things that Ali had to his detriment. And they had that fight, where Ali went in and grabbed Frazier in the legs, and Ali's brother Rudy was there and had to hold Joe back. But Joe had every reason to get antagonistic with the things that Ali was saying, and making fun of him, calling him ignorant, those types of things.
Hospital. We don't imagine. I went to hospital for 10 minutes. You went for a month. Now be quiet.
At that point, Ali said, "You're ignorant."
Said ignorant the man is. Why'd you bring up the hospital? I went to the hospital.
And Joe stood up, ripped off his microphone, and said, "What do you mean I'm ignorant?"
Sit down, Joe.
Why you think I'm ignorant?
Sit down, Joe.
Huh?
Sit down quick.
Why you think I'm ignorant?
The brothers are here.
Doing this too?
No. Sit down quick, Joe.
Well, we're having a scene, as you can see, and it's hard to tell whether it's clowning or for real between the two fighters.
Howard sat there calmly, like he was doing a fight in the ring. He was calling the fight in the studio.
Joe Frazier is really angry. Muhammad called him ignorant, and he's really angry. I don't think this one is clowning at all.
It was sort of crazy in the control room. Certainly, we never expected that to happen. We never expected them the two of them to get physical. A lot of people felt that it was put on, because their fight was only a few days away and would create some hype. Anybody in the studio that day wouldn't have believed that. They were serious. They were very serious in going at it, especially Joe.
A classic fight.
And worse.
And worse, yeah, the big the gorilla.
Some of you heard it, but this is a little conscience. I got a little gorilla here. This is his conscience. I keep him right in my pocket everywhere I go. Right there. And I wrote a short poem. It says there will be a killer and a thriller and a chiller when I get the gorilla in Manila. That's right. And I got his conscience right here to keep me on guard. See, here's the way he looks when you hit him. All night, that's all it can be. All night in Malaysia. That's all you're gonna see. The Philippines, rather. Come on, gorilla. We in Manila. Come on, gorilla.
And then Sonny Liston, the big ugly bear, those types of things. Sonny Liston also had a very nice disposition, was mistreated, and didn't have a lot of education. I don't know if he could even sign his name, but Ali did that kind of stuff to a number of people. Let's see what Sugar Ray.
Wait, speaking on Sonny Liston, I just read this week that Emmanuel Stewart had said that he thought Sonny Liston could have been the greatest of all time. He started boxing after age 30. He really was like 10 years older than he said.
Yeah.
Incredible jab, superhuman power. And I wish I had the chance to talk with Emmanuel Stewart about that, because I interviewed him many times, but we never discussed Sonny Liston. But to hear that a guy like Emmanuel Stewart held Sonny Liston in such high regard is after he trained Vladimir Klitschko and Lennox Lewis, two of the greatest of all time. For Emmanuel Stewart to say that Sonny Liston may have been the greatest ever if he would have started younger and had better trainer, better management, is very high praise.
I think so too. Tyson's trainer from the Catskills, who had a falling out with him and pulled a gun on Tyson. What's his name again?
Teddy Atlas.
Yeah, Teddy Atlas talks about Tyson being one of the best two-handed punchers of all time. And I think you could say that the same thing about Liston. He had the footwork, the natural power, huge set of shoulders, and he could punch from any direction. And he had long reach and huge, probably the largest hands of any top 10 boxer in the last 40 years, 50 years, something like that. He had giant size hands.
Only about 6'1" though, right?
Yeah, 6'1", right in there. Yep. Jack Dempsey, I think, is 6'1". I watched the program on Jack Dempsey this morning. 190 pounds for Jack Dempsey. Liston, he might have been 6 foot. I don't know what his weight was, 208, something like that. Fight weight. So let's listen to, so the point I wanted to make about Sugar Ray is before walking into the fight with, or he was in the ring and he was looking for one last bit of guidance of how he was going to handle Tommy the Hitman Hearns, who could also punch from any direction, had a longer reach, who was a working machine. He was always in shape year round. He was the committed boxer of his era. He was like Tom Brady in the NFL. It's a year-round, full program, good coaching. I don't know about his diet, but I would imagine probably a good diet. And another lighthearted, fun guy, Tommy Hearns, like that man quite a bit from what I know of him. So Sugar Ray's in the crowd and in the ring, and he looks out and he's trying to gather some last-minute bit of wisdom about what he's going to do to hang in there with Tommy Hearns. And he looks out and he sees Muhammad Ali in the crowd. This is 1982-ish. And he says, that's it. That's the answer. I'm going to be Muhammad Ali tonight. I've got the skills to move. I'm going to move. I'm going to stick and move. And it worked. And I think he was behind on the cards when he knocked Tommy Hearns out. I think in round 8. He knocked, that was Manos de Piedra retired in the fight in round 8. I can't remember when Tommy Hearns got knocked out.
14.
Holy smoke. So let's hear what Sugar Ray says about, he talks about how a fighter knows, or how he knows as a fighter, leaving or looking in the mirror in the locker room, what he feels about himself. And he can look at himself and be a separate person Sugar Ray, the person versus Sugar Ray, the boxer?
Yes. When I get to my dressing room, I look in the mirror, and whatever image I see, that's going to dictate what happens in the fight. When I see Sugar Ray Leonard in the mirror, I could beat Mike Tyson. If I see Ray Leonard, the civilian, I'm in trouble. And it really happens. And the times that it did happen, I'm walking towards the ring, and I'm not really feeling it. I'm not 100%. And people say, "Hey, Sugar, hey, go get him." I say, "You have no idea." I say, "Can we postpone this for a little, for a few days? Because a few days later, I will be okay." You with me?
Yeah.
It's just at that precise moment, that particular night, I didn't want to fight.
It's almost like, is Peter Parker seeing Peter Parker or Spider-Man? Is Mighty Mouse seeing the little mouse or the mouse with the cape on? That's really what you're looking for, right? You're looking for the superhero side to yourself.
I really am, as a metaphor. I mean, I look in that mirror and I see who's there. I see who's present at that precise moment. And 9 times out of 10, I saw myself. I saw Sugar Ray Leonard.
He got him down again. It seemed almost inevitable. For the skills he's shown, maybe now they won't call Sugar Ray Leonard a hype. There it is. He stopped the fight. He stopped the fight. And there is a new world welterweight champion.
1979, Wilfred had been heavyweight champ, or won his championship welterweight, I think it was, when he was 17. So he was a very gifted boxer. He peaked early. Have you studied Benitez at all?
Of course. In fact, I still remember where I was watching that fight, Leonard against Benitez. I was at my best friend Mike Pinto's living room on a Friday night, and the undercard, if I remember correctly, was Hagler Antifermo, won, which ended in a controversial draw. Oh yeah, that fight was a huge moment in the childhood. Yep, but Benitez was a great fighter, very slick, defensive, incredible athlete, incredible success at a young age, but limited selling power as a guy from Puerto Rico. They always were secondary to the popular Americans who spoke English. But Benitez was a great fighter in that era for sure. And he has a win against Duran, and can't remember what he did against Hearns.
He got
Might have lost to
knocked out
Hearns.
by
I think he
Hearns.
lost the decision to Hearns.
I think he got knocked out early in the Hearns fight.
No, he never got.
I was talking
Benitez
about
never
Duran.
got knocked out.
I was talking about Duran. I made a mistake. Duran got knocked out
Duran.
early.
Yeah, he got knocked out early against Hearns.
Benitez and Manos de Piedra, Duran. I can't remember.
Decision. It was decision for Benitez.
Wow. And they're both young at the time, probably.
Duran was over 30.
Wow, he's over 30.
I was thinking it was junior middleweight.
So
But Benitez was a fantastic fighter. He won the title at 17 against Antonio Cervantes, who was a legendary veteran, great champion from Colombia. And then he lost an exciting fight to Sugar Ray Leonard on a Friday night on ABC TV with Howard Cosell at the microphone.
So you mentioned Benitez not having the appeal, not speaking English. How do you think Duran passed through that? Was it because of his smile and his charisma in some way, and his willingness to fight 4 times, 5 times a year, something like that?
Yeah, more of a spectacular fighting style and just the emotional and charisma off the charts. And you just love the guy just watching him fight. And then you meet him and it's even greater. I remember the first time I met him was at the HBO building in the 90s. And he wasn't there yet. And I turned around and there he was right. There's Roberto Duran, right? Wow, and my favorite fighter of all time. one of the reasons why I'm even involved in boxing. And he just looked at me and he gave me a smile, like he read that. He was able to interpret that in that 1 second. And it was just such a great feeling to meet him for the first time. Yeah, Duran had incredible charisma, and he spoke his language without needing to speak English or words. You know, when he won that fight against Davey Moore, the redemption fight after the No Mas, and he won the fight, one of his greatest performances ever. And he goes outside the ring to the ropes and is like asking for the fans for forgiveness, and he got the huge cheers and he cried. So yeah, Duran had he cried in Madison Square Garden in front of everybody. How much it meant to him to be embraced by the fans again.
So the No Mas fight, which nobody that I know who was there says he actually said No Mas. Do you know anything more about him saying something like that?
Hi, this is Sifu Slim, author of The Aging Athlete. In this book, you're going to get to hear about two different groups of former high-performance athletes. One group, which is made up of 90% of the former athletes, does not do physical activity on a regular basis and tends to suffer the consequences of a sedentary lifestyle. The other group, which is made up of 10% of the former athletes, is doing physical activity on a regular basis and tends to thrive through the aging process, or at least has a better chance at coping with the aging process. We could have taken these folks to a lab and done all kinds of tests on them. Instead, we slowed them down and sat them down and asked them, in their own words, to describe why they're wired the way they are, so that we all, former athletes and non-athletes, can use some of their inspirational and motivational and mindset lessons in our own lives. I hope you pick up a copy today. You can go to theagingathlete.com. And when you have a chance to read it, I'd love to hear back from you to find out what your thoughts are on the stories of these aging athletes.
I know a lot about that fight, and I don't want to say on a show like this. I've gotten heavy criticism for repeating some of the stories I've been told about that fight. And yeah, he didn't say No Mas, but the less said, the better about that fight, I think. If it was a real fight, is unclear.
If it was a real fight. Okay. So the one thing I don't know if we shared this. I shared this story in the first conversation we had, but Christy Brinkley had a photography press credential, and she was with him, Duran, the evening before, and he didn't stop eating. She said I think he had 3 platefuls of food at what was he fighting at, 145, 150 pounds, somewhere in there?
147.
147. And Christy Brinkley is probably 130, something like that. And she's this bubbly person, intelligent person, fun to be around. She's sitting across from him, and he just wouldn't stop eating. And that's the day before this big rematch with Sugar Ray Leonard. So she said that, and then other people have said, based on that, he could have had stomach cramps or stomach distress and maybe didn't sleep well and what have you. I do think that Leonard was as prepared as he could be, and that Duran was known to blow up in volume and gain 30 to 40 pounds after his fights, partying a lot, celebrating. And Leonard was over in Hawaii, and he made that decision. He called up his attorney within a few days after the fight, and he said, book me that fight as quickly as you can. And he knew that Duran was not going to be in shape in a quick enough time if he had ballooned up.
I just read Duran's book. I found Duran's book a few months ago, after the last time we talked, and he said some interesting things about that fight. He mentioned that the fight was accused to be a fixed fight, but he didn't deny it. He also mentioned that a lot of people made a lot of money off that fight. And what always bothered me about that fight was when he beat Leonard in Montreal, he had all the leverage to call the shots. He didn't have to be forced into that rematch. less than 6 months after he beat him in Montreal. He could have told everybody, I'm the boss now. I want to take 2 easier fights and then I'll fight Leonard again. But he allowed himself to be rushed into that rematch, and you could clearly see physically he was not in the shape he was for the first fight. The ring looked almost twice as big as the Montreal fight. And if you look at the ring entrances and the intensity of the Duran in the Montreal fight and the New Orleans fight, it's totally different. It's not the same Duran. So we'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, have you seen that commemorative thing that probably happened 12 years ago where Leonard was doing a special about his life or about that No Mas situation, and he flew to Panama and he met with Roberto? You saw that one?
Yep.
Yeah. And Roberto didn't have anything more to share about it at that time. And Leonard said, if that's all he wants to share, that good enough for me. And he said they're in the interview with Joe Buck, he said they're not friends, but they're friendly to each other. He's friends with Thomas Hearns. And in this video with Buck, he said, I'm still working on the Hagler relationship. But Hagler passed away, what, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, Leonard and Duran, I remember somebody told me they met Duran and they asked him about Leonard, and he said, and he was expecting Duran to resent Leonard. He goes, no, how could I? We made a lot of money with each other, off each other.
Yeah, Lee talks about that too. In the time where he wasn't allowed to, he had taken his license taken away. So in the late 60s, he said, I'm out here training Jimmy Ellis and these other guys because they were my sparring partners. I'm giving them a chance right now. It's their time. So I'm staying busy and I'm helping them out. And then when he got into his license back, he said, it's about giving these other people in the top 10 or 20 their chance. And we both make money on it, but they have a right to have their chance at pursuing the glory and the finances for all the years of training they did. I think he was a pretty wise guy and very rational about a lot of his thinking. Let's see what I have about the training for Hagler, which I thought was pretty cool from the same interview. What an Adonis Hagler is. I mean, just power and footwork. Not, you can't compare people to Leonard's footwork because he's another Muhammad Ali in a smaller, quicker body, but Hagler put it together very well through hard work, and he's a natural southpaw, so he had a lot to offer.
Marvin, that you thought, okay, I can get him.
I just saw that he was being outboxed by a guy who was a slugger, a guy who was a puncher. And I'm sitting there, and I said, I can do this. And I really believe that. I mean, I really believe that. So I got home, and I went to the office, and I said, I can do this. He said, are you still drinking?
Right. I mean, Hagler was a beast.
Oh, Hagler hadn't lost a fight in 11 consecutive years. So what I did, got back home, and I went into the training camp, and I had guys come in there from all over the country, middleweights, and they put on fight gloves, and they put on headgear. I put on big boxing gloves for sparring, no headgear. I had a referee, I had judges. I created fights. I got cut. It's because the toughest thing for a fighter who's inactive is getting used to getting hit again.
I just can't. You talk about that in the NFL. Forget it. I mean, in boxing?
I'll show you. Let me show you.
No. I'm good.
You good?
I'm good. Fine. I'm good. They call me Glass Jaw Joe.
Getting hit when you're out of the ring for so long and getting hit, I mean, it doesn't feel good. And it jaws you. It's not natural.
Roger tells me that when you guys would go train, family's there, your entourage, everybody's laughing and having a good time in the van, going to the ring. One day you go to the ring and one of those guys, those sparring partners, hurt you.
almost knocked me out cold.
Almost knocked you out. He said, we all got in the van after that, and the thing was dead silent.
No one said one word. It was so quiet in that van going to my hotel. No one said anything. And I said, these son of bitches think I'm getting knocked out. They did.
You thought your family was, thought you had no chance.
Not just the family, no, the whole team, everybody. No one said nothing. And I'm like, these guys don't believe in me. I was so mad. I said, Hagler won't touch me. Because I was going to fight him toe to toe.
That hasn't worked before.
I know. I just, thank God, well, thank God that happened. Thank God that happened. And I was like, I'm a boxer's guy. I'm a boxer's guy. But it took that chance of being knocked out. It changed my mind. I trained for a year and a half for the whole fight. Got in the ring, and I'm scared, and I'm nervous. I'm like this. Because you know, training is one thing, but in a real fight, actual fight, it's a whole different ballgame. So I'm in the ring like this, and I said, pow! I said, this shit still works.
Leonard flurries against Hagler and now escapes from the corner.
By the winner, by a split decision, and new middleweight champion of the world, Sugar Ray Leonard.
Oh, God.
And I was so much faster than he was. I was so much faster than Hagler. And I was doing like little things and making him mad. And I told my guy, I said, oh.
I agree that he was faster than Hagler. And
Yeah, he also sold more tickets.
yeah. 11 consecutive years.
Sugar Ray Leonard looks like he could make a comeback next month.
Yeah.
Unbelievable how good a shape he look.
He's got the gift of the youthful look. And he's got that smile, that beaming smile.
I'd like to see him fight Mayweather.
I would like to see him fight Mayweather when they were both 25.
It wouldn't have happened. No way Mayweather would ever take that fight.
How come it is that Mayweather almost never got popped?
Very carefully protected fighter. He was the only American who he was the only top American at the time. And he was carefully protected. Good fighter, pretty good fighter. You know, Sugar Ray Leonard once said about Mayweather, he's the same level as his father.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray Leonard fought Floyd Mayweather Sr. and beat him pretty decisively. But I'll never forget, Sugar Ray Leonard said that. It was years ago. He said that. He only said it once. And I was like, wow. He only regards Floyd Mayweather just to be as good as his father. And I think and then he stopped saying, he never said it again, I think, because he didn't want to hear the criticism and start any controversy and negativity. But I think that's what he truly thinks about Mayweather. It's basically his father's level. He was a good top 10 contender, but didn't have the same career management.
So fighters know if they're 100%. In your pre and post fight contacts with their fighters and their trainers, have you heard this type of philosophy before?
I know a lot about Mayweather, and the reluctance was always there to avoid the top fighters who could be the most dangerous for him. The highest risk opponents, he always found a way to avoid them. But those guys back then, Sugar Ray Leonard, Benitez, Duran, Hagler, Hearns, they all fought the best.
Yeah. That was where the money was with the other top 10 guys, and then switching weight classes to get to another person with incredible draw and incredible skills.
But they also wanted to fight the best. Boxing changed toward the end of the Roy Jones reign, where he got that guaranteed long-term contract with HBO, and then he had the freedom to pick the opponents that he wanted to fight. And he picked some lower-level guys. And then He tried to avoid Tarver, and then he got forced into Tarver because Tarver was one of the greatest talkers in boxing history. And his nonstop talking and interviewing and calling out Roy Jones is what forced that fight to happen. And Tarver eventually knocked out Jones.
Mm-hmm.
But that blueprint of picking the right fights was kind of started by Roy Jones at the end. Though Roy Jones was an amazing fighter in his peak and prime years. And then Mayweather kind of copied that. And, after Bernard Hopkins and De La Hoya, there were really no great young American talents coming up. And Mayweather was the only one. And the American establishment could not afford to have Mayweather lose. And so he didn't lose. And he avoided a lot of those big fights that the public wanted to see against the guys who earned the big fight against Mayweather, like Margarito, like Cotto when he was undefeated, when they were both undefeated at welterweight, Vivian Harris, Paul Williams.
This was at the same time that the UFC was gaining traction. So the different boxing organizations and all the sponsorship behind that and beer sales and other sales had to look at that and say, we do need a champion. We need a Ken Shamrock, a Frank Shamrock, a Royce Gracie. We need somebody in there that's a sustainable winner in order for us to keep this brand that has been built since the late 1800s, I guess.
Yep, a franchise fighter, like a Hulk Hogan, like a Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard. Mayweather was designated as that guy. Was he a great fighter? He was pretty good. But the true great fighters would have unified all the titles and would have fought all the best. No questions, no excuses. And another thing Mayweather does, which none of the other great fighters do, he takes cheap shots at guys like Muhammad Ali and Mike Tyson in the media. Yep. He tries to bring them down to build himself up. Yep. All the true great fighters, they never do that. They respect all the other greats. They love all the other greats. Mayweather gets jealous and envious at the mention of the other great fighters.
Yeah, he's probably not the person who should be opening his yap about such things. Being more humble, money Mayweather, and not being as silly with his comportment, with his behavior. I sent you an email that I have Quora, Quora, and they send me things based on my past interests. And what they said was Fury versus Foreman in their prime, what would happen? And so one of the comments from a viewer was pretty funny. This is would Tyson Fury beat George Foreman in his prime? And on February 10th, it said, Brian Kelly writes, in his prime, George could bring one of his grills to the ring, put his burgers on, knock out Fury, and still have to wait on his burger. So I like it when fans get creative in their short poetic responses in a blog. So start us off, Scoop, on what you think about these two.
At one time, I thought Tyson Fury was on the road to the all-time greatest. You know, how good he looked against Vladimir Klitschko, winning a decision, and 6'9", the elusive boxing skills, the toughness, the intelligence, the fearlessness, the cockiness, the charisma. Almost a better talker than Muhammad Ali. And physically superior if he would have taken care of himself. But there's something in that mad genius of Tyson Fury that wasn't meant to be a long-term great fighter. Maybe a little like Buster Douglas or some of the other short-term comets, you know, even Mike Tyson. But such high respect for Tyson Fury at his best. I think he would have outboxed Foreman pretty comfortably. He had the footwork and the jab and the movement. I think Foreman would have had a lot of trouble dealing with that 6'9". I think Foreman's 6'3". Big difference. Mm-hmm. But Tyson Fury didn't take care of his body, and he's dodged Usyk 4 times. Now he's finally forced into the fight that's coming this Saturday, but he tried to avoid the fight 4 times. And really, in his last several fights, Tyson Fury hasn't looked good. He's, his body looks bad. He doesn't eat right. Doesn't take care of his body. And somehow he wins these fights basically on instinct. I think Tyson Fury is in big trouble versus Usyk on Saturday night, and the way his team is acting, the way he's acting, big trouble. Very anxious. The team is acting and talking illogically and very anxious. They almost seem to know the end is near.
You know how much Fury is supposed to get for this fight?
I think Bob Arum said 100 million, over 100 million.
So
and they have the rematch. The rematch is guaranteed to happen September. So no matter what happens on Saturday night, there's an automatic rematch.
yeah, I guess the promoters, when they can pay off a fighter, they can pay a fighter 100 million. They stand to gain more than that, so they want to put this all together so it's a series of events if they can protect the promotion. Let's take a look at Tyson Fury training, running uphill, 6'9", 270-ish. Is that what he weighs?
I think he's at his lowest weight now. He's maybe down 235, 240 for this fight. He looks very different.
Come on, boys! Come on, the Gypsy King! That's 6'9" and 19 stone. Running 6 miles up a mountain is hard, no matter how fit you are. And I'm very fit, but I still found it hard. I just gritted through it and got to the top. And my final mile of the 6 was quicker than all of them.
The mountain's a good run, but the mountain's something I wanted to do just as a reminder, to be honest, more than anything. Even at his lowest, he was still, and at his heaviest and in his worst physical condition, he would be able to get up that mountain, not because of physically where he was, but because of how strong he is mentally. And I just want to remind him of that. Even at your lowest, that's how strong he is mentally, because there's fit people that struggle to do that mountain.
Come on, you pack of dossers, keep going! Quicker! When I done it last time, nearly killed me. I done it last time on 0 energy, just heart alone, heart, nuts and brain power. Because I never had anything else. My mind was telling me to stop, but my heart said keep going. Today it was like an easy run, really. He's flying! He's flying!
We run back down.
Should we get going?
Hey, we had a minute.
All right.
The guy is a giant.
Surprised he's actually doing that road work. You know, Muhammad Ali lost his bounce in his legs by his mid-30s. He didn't have the legs anymore. I'm surprised Tyson Fury is still doing this hard running on concrete, and he's even heavier and bigger than Ali was. I don't know if he has his legs left. And if he doesn't have legs, he's in big trouble against Usyk. It's also strange the way he's talking about Usyk. For 2 years, when he was pretending he wanted to fight him, but then the fights would always fall apart, no deal. Fury talked Usyk that he was nothing, didn't deserve to be in the ring with him. He's a middleweight sausage. But now that he has been forced into this fight with Usyk, now all of a sudden he's calling him a Christian brother and the toughest opponent of his career. So these contradictions don't reflect well for Fury's confidence.
Here's the hardest puncher of my youth.
Got to whoop George.
I
know a half one's gone already.
Needs to be made about Tyson Fury is he got the skills young. He came from a family that knew how to move. I think he's the largest of the kids. Is that correct?
I don't think there's any 7-footers there. Yeah, but I think they're lifelong fighters, born to fight. The whole life is boxing.
So he learned at a young age. Foreman didn't learn. You know, he's a street thug in Houston. I think he learned when he was 16, 17, something like that. And you're trying to get to your, his Olympic glory. He was 23, I think, when he got to the Olympics. Where were the Olympics when he fought?
68, Mexico City.
The Bob Beamon jump, correct? A long jump. So Foreman, interesting guy, made money in a variety of things, including his Foreman Grill. Charisma, got nicer with age, got more giving and caring with age. Said he loved Muhammad Ali. They talked regularly. He said it was, the death was hard on him. But, amazing that these people, they start out with the ego, the survival instinct to do whatever it takes. They have a fight or 2 or 3, and then they look back, starting at age 28 or 35 or whenever they reconnect, and they're drawn by this bond of having basically gone to war against each other. And if they were on an Olympic team like Spinks, who was a Marine, I had not known about Leon Spinks having been a Marine. I guess that must have been before the Olympics. Does that make sense? Before the 76 Olympics? Leon Spinks was a Marine, and that's a 2-year commitment. And I know shortly after the Olympics, he was already a pro fighter. So I think that must have happened before the Olympics, that he was a Marine. And the famous green bottle on the first Ali fight that his cornerman hands him, my guess, and if somebody knows more about it, weigh in, but my guess is it had cocaine in a liquid solution, because last year in Florida, I met a person, and this video is online. If you look up Sifu Slim, Leon Spinks, you'll see this on YouTube. And I met a gentleman fishing who was at a bar where Leon Spinks would go. This was after the first Ali fight, before the second. So within 10 days, he said, of the second Ali fight, Spinks was in his pickup truck with a female, and they were doing lines of cocaine, and he's back into the bar shortly thereafter, pounding down drinks. So my guess is that Leon was probably, and his handlers, they had cocaine available, and they stuck that in the water. I don't think methamphetamines in the water right before your final round with Muhammad Ali would have been the way to go, but I think cocaine could get absorbed quickly. And even psychologically, somebody who's been doing drugs, they know that feeling, and it goes right into you. And it gave him the stamina to go in and keep throwing punches in the last round and have that win. I think he became the champion at that time. Is that correct?
Cocaine is a performance-enhancing drug too. Many, many great fighters have been linked and associated with cocaine use and trouble and problems. Many. And also tennis players too.
Yeah.
Great tennis players. So I never knew you could take it with water though.
Oh, well, how else are you going to get the cocaine in your system if if your coach hands you something? You can't inject it, snort it, or have a pill. If you have to get in your system, I mean, you put it in some solution to get it absorbed as quickly as possible. So they had this little canister about yay big, so smaller than a cup, and I think it had it's like the kind that you have a screw top in. And so they took, I think, as I remember correctly, they took the screw cap off, and Leon's over there, and he went back. And why would you switch from a normal boxing bottle, like a sports bottle, to this little cup just in the minute you have before your last round in your first title fight? So That's what I think they did. That's what my ESPN is telling me.
You remember the black bottle? The infamous black bottle?
Tell me about that.
That was the Aaron Pryor Alexis Arguello fight. Yeah, he got the black bottle. The trainer of Aaron Pryor asked, "Where's the black bottle? Give me the black bottle." And then Aaron Pryor performed very well after the black bottle.
So what else do you think they could have in there besides cocaine?
Ooh, I don't know, but Aaron Pryor.
Speed. I guess that is amphetamines.
Ammonia, right? Ammonia. Doesn't ammonia give it a jolt too?
Well, you can sniff it, but you can't drink it. Ammonia opens up your pores. So on a cigarette, one of the things that they got passed through those laws, I think as far back as the 1930s or 40s, was you don't have to disclose that there's ammonia in the wrapping around the cigarette. So when you're smoking, the ammonia goes into your system off that wrapper, and it opens up your cilia, I think is the word. And so your lungs absorb that nicotine that much more quickly, and it lights you up, which is a hard thing for a person who smoked to say no to, because they know that hit is going to come quickly. And people who smoke, I'm talking about coaching people on balance in mind, body, and spirit. I said, somebody who's got an addiction like smoking is the toughest one, because when you're trying to work with them, on their mind is their next hit. So if they're a chain smoker and they smoke all day, the end of this cigarette is they're waiting for that next one. If they're a half a pack a day, they're waiting for their next one. If they're a drinker, smoker, only smokes when they go out drinking, same thing. They put those two things together in the unconscious mind, and it's all powerful, as the great and powerful Oz. It's all powerful, an addictive substance.
I just use bananas when I need a performance enhancer. Bananas and dates on the tennis court. Maybe Gatorade.
So before we started talking about boxing, I asked you if you were physically fit in terms of the amount of tissue you like to have on your body, and your response was you played some tennis, 4 hours, and fill us in on that and your high school weight as compared to now.
Yeah, I've just played a 4-hour match in a tournament down in Bradenton. 6'4", 6'7", 6'7", close the whole way. There was no 4-1. It was on serve and close. Unbelievable match. 4 hours. It was about 80 degrees that day, and couldn't walk for 2 days after. Couldn't do anything for 2 days after. Limping for 2 days, but so I guess I'm in pretty good shape. And I still weigh what I weighed in high school. 165, 170 pounds.
That's amazing. So how would you rank your court coverage now compared to when you played tennis at a younger age?
Well, I know it can't be the same, of course. Just like Sugar Ray Leonard probably can't fight like he could back in 1980. Yeah, I don't know how to measure that, but I know it's got to be about half.
So I played tennis twice yesterday. I played doubles with people my age or slightly older in the morning. Before that, I practiced self-feeding the ball, and then did a workout before that, self-feeding, serve practice, went over and played about 2 hours of doubles with guys. And you're running a lot of sprints. If somebody's hitting drop shots, as soon as you're behind the service line, you're running a big sprint, and then you have to stop. So I did that, and I felt pretty good, and I hit some good shots. And so we were done with that, and then I came home, and I had a podcast with a pro tennis player who's a coach, and he's also an anesthesiologist who's a lot younger than I am. So we were on our podcast, and I wasn't standing up as I am now. And during the podcast sitting, I got the double whammy, huge cramps in my in my hamstrings, and I stood up so quickly I almost knocked the whole computer setup and the lighting off its track. I did knock the camera off, so after my scream, and rarely do I get the double whammy in both legs at the same time. So, there's something neurological happening when you get cramps in both legs at the same time, not just physiological. So I'm bending over and massaging the back of that thing. It's like Sugar Ray Leonard's bicep is in the back of my leg and my hamstring, and they're even tender now as I touch. And he says, get some coconut water. And I had coconut water about 12 feet away in my refrigerator, but I couldn't get to it. I had to stay bent over rubbing, because if these things came back, it was torture, So finally they subsided, and I got to the liquid, and I opened the thing of Coca Vita, I think it's called, or Vita Coco, and I started drinking it, and the cramps went away, and I popped in some magnesium that I had next to me because we were going to talk about supplements. And finally, I was able to stand, not sit, and complete the interview. In the 4-hour match, do you have any history of cramping, or do you just get tired over a 4-hour match?
Wait, that coconut water instant relief?
Yeah, it has electrolytes in it, and it's pretty good quality from what I can tell. This Vita Coco coconut water, and I must have, out of a carton, that the what is it, 2 pints or whatever it is, it's the carton, the thin carton, I was able to absorb that stuff very quickly, and goes right in your bloodstream, and your neurology fires, and that solved that problem. And thank goodness he told me that, because all I had was magnesium, aspirin, and I know quinine in tonic water can do that as well. It's very quick when you pop the quinine in, but quinine's not good for you. But when I used to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a lot, I'd get cramps, and I would take a little bit of that, like maybe a shot glass and a half before going on the mat in the late 90s, early 2000s. And then a little bit halfway through the practice, I would take another little bit of that. The same thing I do when I'm surfing. I have a tonic water bottle in my surf bag that I take to the beach, because cramps out in the ocean are pretty darn dangerous.
But no one never actually had a cramp on the court. Like you, they usually happen hours after, laying in bed, or you stretch or something, or driving in the car, and yeah, I've heard of cases of full body cramps, which
I've seen that.
And actually it happened to the player on the court. But who knows? Maybe they're creating an excuse for losing the match. It's hard to believe the body can endure a full body cramp all at once.
So I was about 8 days ago in the same place where I am now, in Savannah, Georgia. I was coming back from a workout, and then I was in my bed working on my computer, and I had to get up because I felt the thigh cramps going to the hamstring, and it was like a pre-cramp phase where everything was out of whack. So I stood up and I said, holy smokes, it feels like my whole body, hands, everything from head down is going to go into a cramp. And I don't remember ever having that, but it's in your 60s, strange things happen. So I asked the chiropractor about that. He says, yeah, the normal reasons for cramp are trauma, fatigue, minerals out of balance, electrolytes out of balance, not stretching, and overdoing it. Those are the 6 things for cramp. Oh, age, 7 things for cramps. Those are your things that
How about
cause
caffeine?
cramps.
I've also heard drinking too much coffee can cause cramps too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I haven't seen that, but it makes sense to me. Anything out of balance. Your gut biome being microbiome being out of balance, your mind being out of balance, you're wacky, you're dehydrated from alcohol or fitness or just not drinking enough water, all those things. Dehydration, there's the eighth piece, and caffeine, the 9th piece. So there's a big list of things that cause cramps. But if you are a runner and you've been running incorrectly, like the Nike shoes that came out in the 70s with a thick sole, made us become foot heel first landers, which is not good. You want to run like that. That's the absorption. And that's the physiological, powerful way, strong way, balanced way to run. So if you've been doing heel first striking as a runner for a number of years, and you've been running a lot with this impact, or just running too much without doing some exercises and stretches that are helpful in promoting a balanced gait when you're running, then you're more subject to the trauma type of cramps and muscles not firing correctly, shin splints, all of these things. And when I met Dr. J, Julius Erving, the high-flying basketball player of the 1970s and early 80s, at a golf tournament in 1999 in Monaco on the outskirts of the south of France, I asked him if he wanted to get together and hit a bucket of balls the next day. And he was playing in a celebrity pro-am with a lot of actors like Kevin Costner, who wound up winning. He's a good athlete. I think he played baseball in college, if I'm not mistaken, but Costner was still young, relatively young, 1999, and was, age 40, somewhere around 40. So he was a good athlete, but Dr. J was older than that. And he said, I can't go out and play and hit a bucket, a good sized bucket of balls the same day. He said, I can hit a little baby warm-up bucket. And then I thought about it, and I said and I figured out how many jumps he had done from age 10 to age whatever the end of his career was, 32, 34, whatever it was. And it was some number like, I don't know, 50,000. It was some huge number of jumps. And his jumps, if he's getting 40 inches of vertical leap or whatever he was getting, and then he has to land that on concrete in the New York area, Rutgers Park, where he used to fire that place up. Have you ever been to Rutgers Park, Scoop?
Never.
You familiar with that?
Rucker League, the summer league in basketball in New York City. Is it still there?
I don't know. I don't know if it's still there. I hope it is. Rutgers Park, I think it's called. And I don't know how many courts they have, but
yeah, it's actually very famous, and there's probably some documentaries on it. Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to see, actually.
Yeah, there's one about Dr. J where they talk about that, because he was do you know what college he went to?
UMass, right?
So he was at UMass. I'm not sure if it was mostly white guys at the time. When would he have graduated? 1970-ish?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So he's playing like a controlled pass, box out, zone defense, the normal college stuff from 1966 through 70. And some of his friends from his team got to see him play at Rucker League in the summer events. I can't remember if they were 5-on-5 or 3-on-3, but they saw a whole Dr. J that they'd never seen before. The dribbles behind the back, the juke moves, the flying tomahawk slams, and this type of thing. And he might have been a sophomore or junior or something at the time. And they said, we've never seen him do this stuff, but he got in an element there, and he lit it up. And then that stuff with him and other players, Earl the Pearl Monroe and people after that, they just started they brought that into the ABA, or at least Dr. J brought in the ABA first, and then they brought that into the NBA, and then they changed the face of basketball in less than a decade.
He was my favorite basketball player as a kid. I loved Dr. J and the Sixers. over the Boston Celtics and Larry Bird. I was born in Philadelphia, so I always loved Philadelphia, but I always loved the way Dr. J handled himself. He seemed like had a lot of class, good sportsman, and he was fun to watch.
He's an intelligent, articulate person. I don't know if he graduated college at UMass. I would guess he did. I don't know. I don't think you could leave in your junior or sophomore year. I think Darryl Dawkins was one of the early guys who went, either right from high school or a little bit of junior college to the pros. I don't know if before Darryl Dawkins anybody had done that. Anything you remember about that, Scoop?
Harold Dawkins, Bill Willoughby was another one. Not sure who the first one was. I think it may have been Dawkins.
Chocolate Thunder. Breaking backboards.
I did a biofile interview with Darryl Dawkins in New York City several years before he passed away. He said he bought one of Ali's cars, Studebaker or something. He was friends with Ali. He bought one of his cars.
Last thing I wanted to ask you about is I had I call it a harebrained idea when I was down in Playa del Carmen in late January. I came up with this idea because the tennis center where I was doing some of my morning self-feeding and serve practice had a picture of Nadal, Serena Williams, big pictures, like 4 feet in length, height, height, top to bottom, 4 feet-ish. And then it had Michael Jordan. And I started thinking about Michael Jordan and how, he did his personal training, he did his basketball practice, but he only had to play for an hour and a half or whatever a basketball game lasts, with a lot of breaks and timeouts and a halftime. And then I thought about the most Michael Jordan-like tennis player I've ever seen is Nick Kyrgios. And I said, here you've got Nick Kyrgios, who we're treating as a pro tennis player, but he's different than someone like Nadal, who can play 4-hour matches 4 or 5 times in a row and get to the finals and do it again and outlast anybody and outrun them and, not make as many unforced errors. And then you've got Federer, who takes on a lot of that Jordan capability, who's smooth enough and has the mindset to go the 4 hours, but not on clay against Nadal. I mean, who does? But then you have a Kyrgios guy who's taller, bigger set of shoulders, got a cannon of a serve. He doesn't have that stability and sustainability to do 4 hours of that, but yet he's penalized because of the way tennis is set up, that you have to outlast everybody in these 2-week Grand Slam tournaments and 5-day other tournaments. And I said, the world likes this guy. They like to watch his videos. They like to hear his psychological issues, his partying, the bromance that he had with Djokovic. Djokovic said he thinks we're having a bromance. They like all that stuff, and he gets injured too. So he's like a streaky, gifted athlete who's trying to grind it out, and then he gets injured. So I said, this is the perfect person to have a different setup, like challenge matches. You take him when he's 20, and you go, we'll bring in Monfils, we'll bring in these other people that have this incredible talent, older Federer, whoever, and you have these challenge matches where you get people to come in for a 2-day event, and they're shorter matches where it's the best of 3 sets, and you go right to tiebreakers, without all these big ad games, and you get the whole thing done in an hour and a half, 2 hours, and each guy plays for 2 days, and you get to watch this high-end tennis for a much shorter event. I don't want to watch a 5-hour match, out in the sun. I certainly don't want to go to Palm Springs or New York in the summer and watch that. And I was a ball boy at the French Open in the late 70s and early 80s. It was a long day, and I got cramps at the end of the day when I went back to the place where I was staying from having to stand and then stoop and run. I was the back ball boy, not the front running ball boys, but it was just standing all those hours and then the running here and there and bending over all the time. That was hard on my system. So that's my Kyrgios story of the different type of athlete. And Muhammad Ali never had to play 5-hour matches, and Michael Jordan, as far as I know, never had to train 5 hours in a row. Maybe at age 12 and 18, he did that with his friends, but it wasn't this life or death thing with 1 million or 10 million spectators around the globe, or 100 million watching him at Wimbledon. So over to Scoop for his comments on my harebrained idea.
Well, how about even go shorter than that? How about a special 16-man invitational, and everybody plays everybody in a 10-point tiebreaker? and then you add up the points, put all the points together, and there's your champion. I played a guy in Florida in one of the tournaments this winter, and he told me about they did that tournament every Thanksgiving. Everybody would show up, all different levels, and everybody would play each other in I believe it was a 10-point tiebreaker, and everybody would play everybody, and then they accumulated all the points, and whoever had the most points, and there was a wide range of talents. I think that would be I was totally intrigued hearing that, because I've never heard of another tournament like that. That might actually be a successful gimmick change of pace for the pro level too.
We'll put this out, Scoop, in a short, what you just mentioned, because I think that's a valid point. And you could do indoors, you could do it in the winter in Sweden, whatever you wanted, and it would give some, I think, the Australian Open was notorious for people not wanting to go there in the wintertime when they're relaxing, recovering, getting surgeries and recovering, spending time with their families, doing some of their TV commercials. The top players many of them didn't want to go to Australia. And now they've turned it into a hardcore event. I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's a hard on the body tournament. It's a 2-week tournament. It's hot. It's humid. And, why does somebody want to get on a flight from New York or Denmark or wherever they're from and fly to Australia in the winter to go on this grind where there's 3.5, 4.5 hour matches in the sun? If you shorten some of these events, like you mentioned, and they knew it wasn't going to be a debilitating, deleterious thing on their body, they might want to do it more.
I would love to see a 16-man tournament like that where everybody plays a tiebreaker against each other. Be a huge change, and yeah, I would love to see how the players would respond to it, and the fans and the media. Tennis is traditional. Tennis is a traditional sport. Change is hard to make happen.
Yeah, we talked about this, Gene Mayer, and a few interviews I've had with him. We talked about, the change Agassi when he came in with the wig and the bleached hair and the jeans shorts. That changed the face of Wimbledon. The rock and roll type of a thing. The largest fraternity party in the world, which is the Phoenix Open, where the crowd can yell at the players when they're walking down the different fairways. There's stadiums on many of the different fairways, and the pros can yell back and, tit for tat on being demeaning and rambunctious, and they changed some of those things, and the drunken and whatever else they're on fans and their families, eating burgers and watermelon and drinking. They created an event that I don't know if it was just people who didn't want to follow the rules called out 20 years ago to one of the players cruising down there, Phil Mickelson, "Hey, nice hat," or "nice shirt, you bum," or something like that. And then the player yelled back. Maybe that's how it happened. Do you know anything about the Phoenix Open?
No, I never even heard of that. No.
The largest fraternity party in the world is what it's known as. And I would guess it's a 4-day event in Phoenix with stadiums on the fairways. They have Florida and Phoenix, Arizona have the most golf courses per square mile in the world. And Phoenix, I think the number is something astronomical. Phoenix, Scottsdale, and the outlying areas. It could be 300 courses. It might be higher. It's just amazing. There's so many courses there. But pernicious is the word that came to me when I was reading a book the other day. Tending to cause death or serious injury, deadly. So the Williams sisters not wanting to play in all of those tournaments, especially as they got into their later 20s and early 30s, they came up with the idea of training and peaking for the majors that they wanted to play in, and then selling their brand which was, I think, a smart way for them to go. They're big people. They've got a lot of weight they're moving around, and they're top 10 players for a period of years, and they don't want to get into these grinds around the world like Chris Everett and Navratilova had to do. McEnroe did that for quite a while, played too frequently. And when the pay was lower, people like Yannick Noah, who didn't make a lot of money early on, he had to play in a lot of events to keep his sponsors happy and to keep making, $20,000 to come in the quarterfinals, that type of thing. So I think the Williams sisters pulled a smart move, and they didn't take their bodies down in this pernicious way that some of the people like Kyrgios have suffered from his tennis playing and his tennis training, whereas Federer, I think, got hurt in the bathtub incident with his daughter a long time ago, and that thing never left him, and he's hobbled to this day because of that.
Yeah, I remember that. Something, we were walking the kid in the park or walking the dog in the park. He supposedly got hurt. But yeah, I think the Williams sisters would still be playing today if their bodies could take it. If Venus is still playing today, I think Serena would still be playing today if she could still win matches and Grand Slam titles. But it's a miracle they both lasted as long as they did. You remember the father said that they were both going to be retired by age 30? And they're going to move on and do other things. But they both love tennis, and they stayed much longer than anybody thought.
So that's probably good for today's scoop. Do you want to share where your information is on the internet?
I have the ringobserver.com is my boxing site. Tennis-pros, PROSE.com is my tennis site. And my Biophile interview site is Mr. Biophile, MRBIOFILE.com. And my latest book is on Vitas Gerulaitis, Portrait of a Champion, $8.99 at Amazon. Interviewed many people who played and were peers of Vitas Gerulaitis to collect their memories and stories of a great champion, a great friend, and great partier and great sportsman, who both Jimmy Connors and Bjorn Borg said, if they don't put him in the Hall of Fame, take us out. And there's no other book has been written on Vitas Gerulaitis. So one of Vitas's old friends kept pushing me, you got to do a book. You got to do one of your books on Vitas. Please do one of your books on Vitas, the way you do your facing Federer and all. Do one on Vitas. And he broke me down. I decided, all right, let me try doing a feature on him. And I collected some stories about Vitas from people who knew him, and I loved it. And I just kept going and managed to get enough of good content to make a book about him.
Were you able to get pictures of him?
Just a few, yeah. From Fred Mullane, who was a longtime pro tennis photographer.
Did Vitas do any karaoke singing at this partying type stuff that he was known for?
I don't know. I don't know that. I read Andy Warhol's book, and there's a lot of references of Vitas in the parties, and no, there was no mention of that.
What was his personality, in your opinion? Outgoing, friendly, bubbly?
What really shocked me about him was the story that a junior told me, John Rast from Florida, who took a bus from Florida to Kentucky to play a tournament, lost in the final, and then he went and took another bus to Ohio by himself as a teenager, taking buses with bags of dirty laundry. And he gets to Ohio at the hotel at like 9 o'clock at night. And he said Vitas was there, and he said, hey, do you need any help? And he said, just a total stranger. And Vitas wasn't, he was still a junior at the time. He wasn't really well known. And Vitas really tried to help him and offered to help him. And he was blown away that actually happened. And that really shows what a nice guy Vitas Gerulaitis really was. And it wasn't the only time he did something like that. So he was uncommonly kind to other competitors and rivals. And I've never heard of a story where any pro player or any junior player was that nice and helpful to another tennis player.
And great way to end it. Kindness goes a long way. We need more of that in the world. We need cooperation. We need fun. Vitas was known as a fun guy. And we'll leave it at that. So Scoop, appreciate it. And we'll talk to you in the next connection. And I'm pretty impressed with the 4 or 5 tennis level. I'm trying to get to be a high 3-5 and play doubles with the 4-0s when I can. I do like doubles with those guys. I like them hitting it hard at me. I like my net game dealing with power more than mishits and dinks, which I have a lot more of that in the 3-5 zone to deal with. So I'll see if I can get myself up. I'm working hard on the game right now.
Don't stop believing. But if you stop believing, there's always pickleball.
Yeah, that's what they say. Peace out. I'm Sifu Slim, asking people to like, thumbs up, and subscribe, and check out Scoop's work on the internet, as he mentioned, and leave your comments down below, and we'll try to get back to you. Be silly, be friendly, be cooperative, be respectful, and we'll tap into more stuff as more stuff appears. Big aloha. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.